Welcome everyone to the first edition of the SDG Action Conclave 2020, and we are conducting today's session focusing on SDG Goal 1, that is no poverty. So let me tell you a bit about our organization, that is Youth Forum under Alexis Groups. Youth Forum is a project under Alexis Society, and our team consists of inspired young students and professionals who are solely interested in creating positive social impact by conducting research on policy issues, writing thought provoking and insightful blogs, designing creative social campaigns, organizing life changing events, and interviewing leaders and change makers. As it is correctly said that the youth are not only leaders of tomorrow, but also partners of today. So we at Youth Forum, a team of creative and encouraging individuals with a shared mission, a mission to change the world. So, through this first edition of the SDG Action Conclave, we wish to bring together the change makers and the leaders from around the globe under the hashtag Act for SDGs campaign week of the United Nations. It will help to prepare an actionable agenda that will aid in achieving all the sustainable development goals through all stakeholder initiatives and more. While the world leaders meet virtually at the United Nations General Assembly to grapple the issues and give a solution to the tough times, we are trying to do our small bit by taking action and raising awareness and initiating a better direction ahead. The turning point of the planet and the people needs to be now. So today we have with us Mr. Andy Russell Sir. Sir is a digital media, ad tech, marketing tech, and behavioral science innovator and pioneer. He has invested in, incubated, or run over 50 digital companies. He founded Trigger Media, Inside Hook, FIVO, an Impact Collaboration Platform, which partnered with the United Nations on the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. Sir was a partner at the venture capital firm Victory Ventures. He was also a partner at the private equity group Pilot Group. He began his career building complex financial models at JP Morgan Chase. Sir sits on the board of the Mount Sinai Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry Department, the Advisory Council for New York's Stem Cell Research Foundation, and the Advisory Board of Pandemic Action Network. Sir was the founding chairman of Build New York and was the recipient of New York's 2020's Global Leadership Award. Greetings, sir, and thank you for joining us today. Now, let me introduce our chair for this SDG Action Conclave 2020. Kunal Mandal, sir, is the co-founder of Gyan Space, a gamification company which uses quizzes and other games as a tool for personal growth and people engagement, and citybytesindia.com, a travel portal which helps travelers discover and book inspiring city experiences provided by local experts. Currently, he is on a mission to teach curiosity as a life skill, increase awareness about sustainability, and empower young Indians to be more than they thought they could be. Now, I would request Kunal sir to take forward the session.
Thank you so much, Sangyukta, and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you who is listening and joining in for today's session. I have a very, very special guest with me, and he is Andy Russell. Andy, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me join and to have this opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much, and pleasure is all ours. So today's discussion, the focus goal is goal number 1, no poverty. And it's probably one of those goals which encompasses every other goal. And even how SDGs were created, the original goal, which was the Millennium Development Goals, were pretty much focused on poverty primarily. And then, of course, it was because the blueprint needed a little bit of rejig with the times that are coming in the future. The SDGs were created. Now, my first question to you would be that, I mean, in your early career in education, you seems to have always been a smart-minded person in business, and you have pretty much a clear idea about human psychology. You told me that. Now, I mean, is there a link between you taking up a stand for achieving SDGs and your understanding of the humans? What would you say in that front? Why do you wish to work for achieving SDGs? I mean, what was your philosophy for that?
Oof, what a great question. Huh. So, and Kunal, to the work that you do, it's very much connected. I've always been a very curious person, like extremely curious. And so when something worked a certain way, I want to know why. When societies worked a certain way, I want to know why. When I looked up at the sky and I saw the stars, whoa, that's like, why, right? So I was always trying to figure out why. And then probably at a fairly young age, I was seeing how children would behave with each other, how teachers would treat children, how people would treat each other. And then I started asking the same question, why? Because at times, a lot of it didn't make a lot of sense. Just like it didn't make sense how the stars were all the way up there. And what does that mean? They're however many, billions of light years away. What does that mean, right? And then all the way down to what is the meaning of life? Like, why? There were so many questions. And that just truly led me to really trying to understand human emotion and human beings, which is probably more complex than understanding the stars or understanding anything. Like, why do people feel a certain way? What gives people excitement? What gives people fear, anxiety? What gives people curiosity, desire? And then why do people treat each other a certain way? So that was, when I went to college, that's what I studied. I studied psychology, but it was a very specific kind of psychology, which is called abnormal psychology, which is, why do people behave irrationally? Why do people make the decisions they make? If things are not in their best interest, why do they do it anyway, right? So I followed a whole career along that path and studying humans as my subject matter. And without thinking, like, all humans are the same. Not even close. We're all individuals. And if we're all individuals, what makes each of us tick? And what are the commonalities below which make each of us tick? And so that's been pretty much my entire career. And off of that, I was able to build a lot of companies. If you can understand what makes people tick, then you can build some pretty interesting companies to help benefit those people, right? So fast forward to 2016, which I guess is 4 years ago, when I got invited to build some software behind the 2030 agenda so communities could collaborate to solve the challenges that stood in the way of achieving the goals. And I started to learn more about, global situations. And because I'm a tech innovator, engineer innovator, science innovator, person innovator, human innovator, community innovator, all of a sudden I'm looking around being like, wait a second, we have all the technology, all the knowledge, all the energy, all the growing capacity, and enough people that we don't have to suffer anymore. Something's wrong. Like, literally something's wrong. And that goes deeply into human behavior, right? Why? And we should all be asking this question. If there's enough of everything, why are some people still hoarding and being greedy to have more, way more than they need? way more than their family for the next 10 generations would ever need. When there's so many in the world who have nothing, and it's not like they want handouts. They just want the fair shot to earn, right? The fair shot to learn and the fair shot to earn. And there's something fundamentally broken with humans and human behavior that we've inherited from our ancestors, which is, survival of the species when there wasn't enough to go around, right? So you had to make sure there was enough for the next winter. You had to make sure there was enough for the next season. But somehow, we haven't realized, oh, we've reached that point in time where there's enough for all, and all ships rise with higher tides. So that's really what pulled me fiercely into the SDGs, realizing that we just need to get out of our own way, get out of our own egos, get out of our own fears, and stop competing in a way where it means that somebody else has to lose. How do we compete in a way where we're competing to be more collaborative so everybody rises? So I hope that answers that question, because after having the career I'd had and my passions about being curious, and anybody who's curious has to be scratching their head, being like, how did we get here? And how do we get out of here? And isn't it really just about the humans? It's not about climate change. It's about the humans that are making climate change. It's not about poverty. It's about the humans that are facilitating more poverty. Every one of the SDGs, it's a human problem. It's not a water problem. It's not a land problem. It's not a resource problem. It's a human problem. So that's my, it's a different way of looking at it, but it's just, to me, a quite obvious one. In particular, when we have satellites and we've got Wi-Fi and we've got so much learning material on the internet, and we've got access to solar power. Wait a second, doesn't that mean that anybody could learn an equal education and isn't at the beginning of everything? Wait a second, so who's getting in the way? Yeah.
No, that's really fascinating. And two things that you mentioned, of course, that it is indeed a human problem. And the second part is that few people are hoarding. And in that context, I will sort of come to my next question. So I was reading some statistics, and it says that the wealthiest 1% of the American households own 40% of the country's wealth.
Yep.
And this unfair system of distribution, of course, leads to high poverty, and it is sort of holding us back from achieving the goal number one, which is probably the most crucial of them all. And despite policy commitments to reduce poverty across the world, and it's been going on for a decade or more, the gap between the richest and the poorest is growing even wider. So my question to you is that how can we shift the way economics work to reward the people for the work they do and not the wealth they own?
That's a really big question. And I wish I had a definitive answer to that, but maybe I do. Maybe I do. So policy doesn't change anything. And probably governments won't change anything. People change things. So the real question is, how do you raise higher consciousness on the planet? And I have no problem with the most innovative people who create the best products and services and everything to make great things for humanity, to have tons of money. I just want them to spend it in a way that is investing in new innovation around the world for those who have less. Because that's responsible innovation. It's actually responsible capitalism, right? And for these people to be sitting on their wealth at this point in time, not realizing that they're hoarding their money with the hope that maybe it's going to go down to their kids and their kids' kids. Excuse me, we're sitting in a period of time where the human race may not make it another 20 years. So if it's not now, when? Because literally, when you die, you kind of really can't take that with you. And by the way, it's not just you dying, I'm talking about all of us dying, like all of us together dying, right? And if you had that kind of wealth, wouldn't it feel really, really good to help be part of a solution of making sure we all don't die? Like the extinction of the human race and every animal, blah, 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 blah. Wouldn't that be like, whoa, I won in life. I made all this money and I was able to save the human race. So, I'm kind of thinking, and there's something so wonderful about young people. So wonderful about young people. And I think so coming back to psychology, right? And the human mind and the way human beings behave. So much of our lives, and it's actually funny that I'm speaking to people in India because of your traditions and your belief system. But most of our lives, so I'm speaking to the converted. Most of our lives, at least in America and in a lot of places in the world, we go through life purely being afraid of death, right? Like, and if you realize the older you get, you're getting more afraid of death, right? So you're trying to figure out how to hold on to life longer. So when you get really old and you got lots of money, what's the only way of holding on to life? Pass it down to your kids so they can pass it down to their kids. How do you do that? Wealth. And that's the psychology of at least Western humans. So if we flip it, completely flip it, and be like, okay, prior generations, thank you very much, but we're the future. And when I'm talking about the future, I'm talking about Sangyukta, right? And all the other young people who say, okay, we're the future. Can you do us a favor? We don't want your money. We want you to invest in education and more opportunities for the youth to grow our world, because your money is not going to do us any good with horrible poverty, any of the SDGs. And those are goals, but the goals are like to make sure those things don't happen. Like, let's get rid of poverty. Let's get rid of polluting the ocean. So it's like it doesn't matter how much money you have or how many buildings you can put your name on or how much influence you have if to your kids and your grandkids, you're leaving us literally into a tortured, suffering life before extinction. So please, elders, please, and there's something about the youth that are pure, that are untainted, that are still have curiosity and still have hope. And to just maybe have a campaign or something which says, please give us a chance. Please give us a chance. And it's not shame on you, because the elders didn't know what they were doing and they did their best, right? And the technologies that exist today to actually rise everybody up didn't exist. It was actually on their backs that built all the possibilities that we have today. And it's why it is very possible to achieve the 2030 agenda. It is very possible. It's not only possible, it takes a whole bunch of stubborn people who don't want to do it to make sure we don't achieve it, because we have all the technology and we have all the solutions. They just have to be put together and they got to cooperate. So maybe it's time for the youth to say, hey, grown-ups, please grow up. Stop fighting with each other. Stop trying to be stronger, smarter, faster, richer, whatever. I don't care who's got a bigger car. Doesn't matter. Please play nicely in the sandbox together, grown-ups. And and get us out of this mess. And get us out means you have all of you heads of industries across the board. Stop talking about the future and stop lying to your grandkids. Stop lying, right? If you want to be authentic and you really care about us, please just get in a room together and play nicely and figure out a way to get us out of here. And please invest in the next generation. Invest in the youth. That's where your money belongs. And that's where your power belongs. And that's where the innovation, and that's where all the technology belongs. Otherwise, if you don't, grown-ups, your whole life was a waste. It was just a waste. Everything you did, everything you worked for, everything you strove for, all your challenges, all your suffering, great. Now you're about to hand us all this money, and then we die. Right? Like what? So it's thank you. Please grow up, and please now show us that you love us. Make your legacy. Make your legacy. And your legacy is to be grown-ups who are investing in the future of the human species, of our ancestors, of our future generations, in a beautiful new world. A beautiful new world. And please give us hope. And if you guys, sorry, grown-ups, if you can't do this, it's very hard for us to have hope. Please give us hope.
Yeah, that's so well put. I mean, hope is probably the best weapon and best, sort of tool that we can always use to keep ourselves propelled forward. And at this point, I mean, two things you said. So, of course, any investors who are listening in, please invest in youth. And any young entrepreneurs who are listening in, please go and ask that invest in us. That's,
by the way, sorry for interrupting, Kunal.
Yes.
It's not just invest in youth entrepreneurs, because no, invest in the education, the resources, the food distribution, free energy. Like when I'm like, sorry, young people should not have to worry about having to pay to have their devices charged or to have access to the infinite library of information that is called the internet. That should be free for all young people so they can learn, full stop, all right? From there, please make sure that the young people have food and clothing and healthcare. Bare minimum, bare minimum. From there, please, if you like, set up mentorship programs and then hey, Mr. CEO, cool, awesome, way to go, retire. Now, go be the CEO of some young person's company that, by the way, is way smarter than you in modern day technology and communications, and that young person mentor you on how to build a company of the future. Stop holding on to your big title at some big company that makes you feel good, right? No, you already had that. You got enough money, you got all this stuff, cool. Go be a CEO at some young person's company and you will begin to be young again and learn from the youth about what it means to be digitally connected, digitally savvy, digitally everything. Or, Mr. Old Person, if you feel like you've learned enough, okay, keep getting old. Keep getting old, keep doing the same old thing. But if you're talking about old people about continually growing, continually learning, aren't you curious about all the tools that we know how to do? And all you got to do is to one of these CEOs, let's go to a computer. Why don't you show me how to use Zoom? Set it up for yourself. Why don't you want to see how quickly I can edit a video? Yeah. Oh, you can't do that? You can't even turn your computer on your own? Really? Okay, then you're a dinosaur. Then go ahead, continue out in dinosaur land. Or why don't you come down here and be the CEO of a fast-growing, awesome company run by a bunch of youth, where you can actually add a ton of value with your network relationships and your experience. Sounds logical to me.
Yeah, it reminds me of a movie called The Internship, where Robert De Niro, plays this role of the intern. So he loses his job, and then he comes back and joins this very new e-commerce company. And he not only sort of learns new things, but in the process he's able to mentor the CEO there as well, and sort of teach her how to deal with all kinds of personal issues and all kinds of other things. So yeah, I mean that's so probably an important point that you talked about there. Now I mean,
sorry, Kunal, you just got me excited. This gets me excited. Another challenge, I would say, to the CEOs of the world, the global world, as a challenge, why don't you bring on 3, 4, 5, 10 mentors into your big CEO company that happen to be youth? Why don't you let the youth mentor you on how to run your big company? Because your big company grew in a different time. And by the way, thank you. Thank you for growing this big company through a different time. But times have changed, right? And by the way, we're also your future customers. So wouldn't you like us to mentor you about like how we consume stuff or what's important to us? And how cool would it be for those 10 young people to mentor a CEO from some big company and maybe actually steer that big company to realize it? Isn't it time for young people to teach grown-ups how to behave?
Well, yes, emojis and beyond, as we call it, right? So I mean, pretty much. I mean, if you look at even the Sustainable Development Goals, I think it's pretty much time that it's not just you involve us and then give us a stage to speak, but also include us in the action and the decisions that are being taken. Because if you are taking the decisions for a planet that we are going to live in, we might as well be part of that decision. That has always been one of the thought process that I always had in my mind. But we are talking about I'm just going to bring one thing into the equation here. You were talking about investments and entrepreneurship and things like that, and I quite funnily read in one of the articles that I found when I was researching a little bit. It says that you at some point decided to forego your salary in your startups, and one of your investors commented that, I don't know whether he's an entrepreneur or a huckster or a dreamer. So what are you? And tell us a little bit about what you did and why you did it, so that everyone who is these days just talk about billionaire entrepreneurs. Please tell us why you did it and what you did.
So one of my last things I did, I had built up a very good track record, right? So I was able to raise a whole bunch of money just to invent turn my ideas into companies, without the investors even being like, so what are the companies? I'm like, I'll figure it out. So you got to have a good track record to be able to do that, right? And it was, so when you start a company from scratch, from an idea, or a few companies from ideas, it clearly takes some time to grow big companies, right? You guys don't know it. It's called the New York Post. It's a newspaper in New York, and some of it's good and some of it's like kind of trash. And there's certain reporters out there that just, like to stir up whatever. It's called a hatchet job, right? They go after people. So I think it was 3.5 years into having raised the money, probably 2.5 years into having launched 2 companies. And the reporter was basically saying, so how come Andy's companies aren't paying dividends yet? But dividends when you're growing big companies, it usually takes, at least in the US, right, tens of millions of dollars to build companies, to grow, to actually mean anything, right, to be substantial. And then maybe, however many years later, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, maybe they will pay dividends. And dividends is like when you've got extra free cash flow. Like, oh, we have so much cash flow, it's too much. We can't even figure out how to put it back into the business to grow it, right? So that's what that article is about. But listen, it's a very good point, though. It raises a very good point. I raised money from a bunch of very big deal people, and a lot of them I'd made a ton of money for before. A lot of them were entrepreneurs who I'd backed before, and some of them were just like pure finance guys, which means they're used to investing in the stock market. Okay, they're like, okay, we're investing our money, and I put it into a public company, so where's my dividend, right? So it was just very funny because whoever made that comment was just true. They were just expecting like, oh, I put in money, where's my dividends? But that's just a weird story. But the truth of the matter is, there's a very fine line between somebody who is a serious innovator, which means they see things that other people don't see. They see into the future, and they build solutions to problems that people don't even know they're problems yet, right? And to many people, they look at those people like, huh, one, are they crazy? Two, are they just a dreamer? And three, are they just like really good salespeople and really good convincing because they believe in what they're doing so strongly, right? So, and that's kind of the world of being an entrepreneur. And like, at least in America, right? An entrepreneur in America, and the stuff I built are pretty big companies, right? And if you see into the future and you believe so strongly, every one of us at some point in time has come across the exact same thing, is crazy, dreamer, or are they just like a really good sales guy? And by the way, it's not for everyone. I'm telling you, it is not for everyone. And it's as much of a blessing as it is a curse to be able to not only see problems that other people don't see yet, but start building solutions to those problems that other people don't even see yet. It's a very complex life. Sometimes extremely painful life, right? Because you come across stuff like what you just read. So I'm actually really glad you just read that, because you have to work. If you go work at a big company, your boss tells you what to do and you do it. And you slowly just do that, and then you do it well, and then it's a very predictable life, right? It's a very easy life. To be courageous, to see that things are not going well. And this comes back to my curiosity from the beginning, right? I was like, I'm curious, like, wait a second, why are things happening this way? Oh, this doesn't make any sense. Wait a second, it looks like there's a little corruption over there. And you know what, I'm gonna build a better way of doing this because that's all gonna fall apart one day. And like, this is like a train wreck about to happen. So when I get curious and I dig in really deep, and then if I find things that are broken, I just start building better versions, better alternatives. It's a painful way to go through life, but it's important. It brings meaning to me. I have children. I have a 13-year-old boy and a 15-year-old daughter. And I'm that guy who said, enough, and it's time for me to build for my children and for other people's children, and give them the tools, and then teach them how to fish. Instead of giving them fish, teach them all how to fish, and do that with exponential tools that can actually do that, using technology and infrastructure in a way better, in a way that we can do. So yeah, that actually is what pulled me hardcore into the UN and 2030 Agenda. It's what pulled me over to the continent of Africa at the first Pan-African Youth Connect Summit. And it's just who I am. And it's, yeah, I hope that, others will lean into it. I hope this is pretty usual for me. People think I'm crazy for a couple of years, and then they just are like, no, he's a genius. But it takes a little bit of time in between, right? So I'm hoping that people will now realize that, like, when I stopped working for money and more started working to build stuff for future generations, that those people who looked at me like, wait a second, what happened to him? He used to be like, he used to build all these great companies for profit and all this stuff, and then it's like, oh no, what happened to him? I'm hoping other people will, I'm hoping that they will start to do the same.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, because all the young entrepreneurs who are listening in, I just wanted, I hope that they paid enough attention to what you just said, and how your philosophy has moved from profit to purpose, and probably that's what we need more and more. And you have done it firsthand, and you have told us how and why. So this is really inspiring. Thank you so much. And at this point, since you mentioned the African Youth Summit and the your sort of getting into the UN 2030 agenda, I will of course bring in Impact. You founded it as a collaborative platform, which is endorsed by the UN Secretary General's office, and also, as I understood it, it's an engine behind the africaconnect.org, and sort of an online collaboration workplace for young African entrepreneurs to seek resources, mentorship, and funding to support their sustainably focused startup. And I thought that this is like very, very impressive step taken by you. My question is twofold. So one is, please tell us about Impact and what you're exactly trying to do there, so that our audience get to know more about it. And secondly, are you planning to take this to other countries, including India and Kyrgyzstan and Bangladesh and so many other places? What are your vision? Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm really glad you asked the question. I wasn't prepared to speak about it, but I'm very happy you did. Being in the digital media, ad tech, marketing tech, gamification business for like 20 years, and then going to United Nations, when they gave me the 2030 plan, right? And I read through the plan. I go, this isn't a plan. These are a bunch of goals. And these are a way of measuring, like, if we achieve the goals. I'm like, but where's the plan? Like, how do we get to the goals? And there was nothing in there about it. So then, I was looking at all these social media companies. We have Facebook here, there's TikTok around the world, there's all these things. I'm like, but wait a second, where's the collaboration platform for people who have different industry expertise, different cultural backgrounds, to collaborate, come together from our different fields of expertise or different stages of life, to come together and collectively build solutions to the challenges that. So I broke down the 7. By the way, there are really only 16 goals, if you haven't realized. The 17th goals are public-private partnerships, collaborating. Well, what, we're all supposed to go to the United Nations to do that in one room? No, sorry, that's like my grandparents or my parents' years. No, where's the online platform to be able to collaborate? That is goal number 17. And without number 17, all the others don't work. So what I built was a platform, and it goes back to, I'm not sure you've over there heard the story about when our president, JFK, back in The 60s went to our Congress and said, we have to put a man on the moon. And I want the budget to put a man on the moon. And this is where the term a moonshot came from, okay? And they said, okay. And then he got off stage. And then NASA, which is our space program, and all the scientists say, Mr. President, it's a really good idea, but we have no idea how to do that. Like, none. So he goes, okay, but we have to. So he goes, so go find the greatest scientists, the greatest behavioral scientists, everything that we have in the country, and bring them in all into one room. So they did that. And then he got up on stage with a chalkboard, and he said, okay, so I'm hearing we can't put a man on the moon. Please tell me why not. What do you mean, why not? He goes, no, tell me why not. Otherwise known as, what are the challenges? Mr. President, we don't have a rocket. No rocket. Why not? Well, we don't have metal that's strong enough. Why not? We don't have metal that's light enough. Why not? We don't have fuel, and we don't have these things called spacesuits, and we don't have food. And okay, cool. He wrote them all down. So those were the challenges to put a man on the moon. And he goes, oh, anybody else? No. All right, cool. Then that's your to-do list. Just solve all the challenges, and you'll reach your goal. And now you've got all the smartest people in the country from different lines of expertise, and we'll fund it, and then just knock it out. And that's exactly what happened. So what I built was a modern day version of it. JFK did not have this thing called the internet or smartphones or the entire library of information on the internet and our own life experiences on a global basis or on a very regional local basis. So I just built, it's called a SaaS, which is software for service, which means it's a platform, and I can print out infinite copies of it. And by the way, you can find out more about it at the website is Get, Empact, EMPACT.com. And Empact stands for impact with empathy, right? And what it is for community groups, I don't care if they're large or small or whatever, just determine what are the goals of the group. And now once you determine what the goals of the group are, figure out what the challenges are to achieving those goals. Cool. Now bring in the community of experts, business leaders, company owners, youth, blah, blah, blah. Now start crowd solving the challenges to achieve those goals. And by the way, if you need any articles or whatever from the internet, drag them in. Boom, I've got an entire library of anything that's needed. Then create little workout rooms so you can have like breakout section, building companies all over the place. And then instead of voting people up because, oh, wow, your TikTok was really good, or wow, your Facebook, right? You know that look? Okay, thank you. I hope the youth will. Instead of getting an upvote, so somebody makes me feel confident that I look better when I can put like a screen on my face. No, they upvote people for being better collaborators, better givers, better solution finders. Yeah, so I built that mostly with my own money, with a team of incredible engineers, behavioral science people, a lot of help from the Secretary General's office. And yeah, the last Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, and his special secretary around the SDGs, Dr. David Nabarro, encouraged anybody who cared about the future of the 2030 agenda or the future of humanity to use our software. So I put it into, there's a for-profit, clearly because like, hello, any company that needs to collaborate with its employees across time zones, ta-da. But then I developed a non-for-profit, which I control both. And in the non-for-profit, I will donate it to any community that will further any of the truly the 16 SDGs. And then I will donate the 17th one to any community that has a real community, that has a real goal. And then with that, it can be, then it's done at the local level. So it's local communities, but you can bring in global experts and global business leaders and global financing. So yeah, that's what I built. And that's one of my contributions to, I actually didn't even realize that I set up the stage, that older people should be building technology for the next generation to actually build their own companies for education. I did, it was kind of like a setup. I didn't even realize I was saying that, but that's exactly what I did.
Wow, this sounds really fascinating. And, I'll probably ask two questions at this point. So one is, you have built Empact and you have made the collaborations happen. Could you tell us what kind of impact has had so far? A little bit into that.
Sure.
And the second question that I would like to ask in the context of Impact is that, I think if the data is probably correct, about 4 billion people in the world still don't have access to the internet. The digital divide still remains quite a bit of a reality. So if we are building digital companies and digital platforms, what do we do about that accessibility? How do we make the system more inclusive so that these people also get the benefits that at least 48% of the world population is getting?
Yeah, so I hate to break this news to all of you. It's not that hard to get connectivity to everybody at all. The technology exists to get it to everybody. It's just a matter of the big companies keeping the price at where it is. You got it? It's just about money. And it's not just about money that would cost a lot to get it to everybody. No, it's about the big corporations and their profit, right? Because it's just not hard. You can take a big cellular, not even big, about this big, cellular dish that taps right down from the satellites, boom, okay? And then spits out cellular data. And then the cellular data clearly converts with a chip in here, right, into Wi-Fi data. Like that's it, full stop, right? So again, there's a level of greed and for corporate profit that is making decisions that is holding back infinite education from 4 billion people, for individual like human beings. And by the way, it wouldn't cost them that much money. It's not costing additional money. They just can't keep the same price up for everybody while giving it away over here. That is the opposite of being humane. That is inhuman, right? That is inhuman. It's unacceptable, full stop, all right? So when I tell you we have all the technology to do all of this, that's very real. And to put out those devices like this and to put concentric circles, right, of these chips that clearly can become repeaters, right, of cellular data onto cellular data onto cellular data, and then flip it into digital data, right? What do you need for that? Labor. Whoa, what do people need? Jobs. Whoa, once you have a job, what can you afford? Food. Once you can afford food, what can you afford? Whoa, maybe even energy. And yeah, we have all the technology with solar panels. The sun's everywhere. You don't need to tap the earth to find an oil well. You don't need to do it. You don't need to tap into a grid to get energy from the sky. What you need is to set up a whole bunch of solar panels, link them together, and then you put a little meter on there, so anybody can walk up to there, plug in their ultimate learning device into there, charging my energy, okay? And now I can learn. And as I learn, all of a sudden I go from a manual laborer, before you knew it, now I'm a teacher. Oh, now I'm a doctor. Oh, now I'm an engineer. What? So that's what I'm talking about. And why is that not happening? And I don't want this to be an anger thing, right? Because we have to get over anger. We just do, right? We have to have a new mindset. And it's a mindset that money does have a purpose, but like a very important purpose, and hard work, right, should be rewarded. But none of it matters if our children are going to suffer. None of it matters. And more than that, and it's not shame on us, older people. It's not shame on us. It's maybe have the younger people just say, please. Please. Think about it a different way. And maybe it's just a change in a mindset, okay? So to answer the other question is like, what are examples? So when we went over to myself and my my magical wife, when we went over to Rwanda in 2017 for the first Pan-African Youth Connect Summit in Kagame, there were 3,000 attendees from 70 countries, 14 heads of state from countries of Africa, and they were trying to build out youth hubs, technology, to teach young people how to use technology and the internet to build. So when we found out about this, we dropped everything and we went, about a month in advance. And then we started working with a lot of the youth over there. And then we launched, it's called Youth Connect with a K, youthconnect.org, where you can see it in the works. And within, I think it was 3 weeks or 4 weeks, there were 14,000 people across the continent on the platform. And the goal, when I say every community has to have a goal, right? Their goal was more employment for the youth. And it's because the continent of Africa has the largest youth population in the world, and 62% were unemployed. That's unacceptable, right? So the goal is more employment for the youth. So what are the challenges? This is where it got fun. Innovate new agricultural businesses, innovate new energy businesses, innovate new connectivity businesses, innovate new education businesses, innovate da-da-da. So what did it turn into? It turned into a innovation competition around the areas that actually are needed for sustainability. So, to bring new jobs. And to me, it was enough is enough of, foreign countries coming in and, taking control, or the big money people. And, the truth of the matter is, if you want to stop being reliant on the power structure, take the power into your own hands, which means take responsibility for yourselves, right? And I don't mean rebel. I don't mean resist. So if they're holding energy back from you, make your own energy. And if they're holding back learning from you, create your own connectivity. And if they're holding back, food, well, learn how to do better farming on here and how to, put more nutrients back into the soil, right? And that can be done very much on the community level, right? A community little power station with solar things. And that's where I would like to see the funding going, down to the community entrepreneurs building their own sustainable communities. Once you have sustainable communities, nobody can control you. Nobody has power over you because you don't need anything from them. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a rebellion. It's not, it's just a beautiful thing. You just take responsibility for yourself. One person at a time, one family at a time, one household at a time, one community at a time, and then larger and larger now, right? So one of my greatest ones, and by the way, I personally funded about a dozen of these companies. And one of them was from like a small village in Rwanda. And by the way, the companies came from, I think, 40 different countries on the continent. It was such a magnificent thing. And this one company, this guy in a small village was making menstrual pads for women, but out of banana fiber. And it was creating jobs, and he did it so the young women could stay in school. All right. So I'm like this, whatever, New York City guy building these businesses. You think I'm going to come up with that idea? No way, right? So that's one of my favorite stories and one of the my favorite innovations, because something that I would never come up with that, right? And when we have a World Wide Web, and when we have each other as resources around the world, holy cow! Like, how much did I learn just from that? And then that gave me something to do, to invest, that would create jobs, and then they create more jobs because they're still selling. They're not. It's not donation, right? But what it did, it allowed young women, young girls, to stay in school, have education. So that's my favorite story. And there were, I guess, 11 other companies that I backed out of that kind of cohort. And this is very important. So what I need, very much need, is any community who wants, a platform, a version of it, customized for them. It has to be a community that can take leadership of that community and the platform. What ended up happening is I was running a whole bunch of other companies. Like, I ended up having to run Africa Connect on top of it, right? So that's not sustainable for me. Like, I couldn't do all this, which is why if you go on there, you'll see very little activity, which is so sad. And it makes me so sad for the past year and a half, is I just couldn't, and it was like, who am I anyway in New York, running a community of entrepreneurs and investors and advisors for companies to grow all over Africa. So that's my caveat. Like, somebody who has an existing community or has an existing goal, right? Has an existing structure in place, then I'll invest the time to get it going, but then it's in their hands. And that's what I mean. We got to think like as communities, as local communities. And then someone like me can then give you the tools.
Wow, that sounds like something that we should get into and try and help bring to this part of the world. And from on behalf of Alexis, I'd like to say that we would love to take a look at that and see how we can probably bring it to India and Asia and then probably beyond. Now, I mean, there are a few things that you mentioned, and I'll go back to the previous answer that you were giving, and you told the NASA story, and I read somewhere interestingly that the average age of the team that worked on the moon landing project in '69 was less than 30 years old. I mean, that is something for everyone who is listening in, how youth can really make things happen. Probably there's no better example than that, right? And that's and you exactly said that. So thank you so much for that encouragement. And now, of course, the things that you are trying to do with Impact and how it has impacted the local communities to create jobs and actually lift a lot of people out of poverty clearly. The way economically I tend to look at it now with all the things that you have shared, is more like you have direct benefit transfer. What you have done is direct technology transfer. So you basically empowered them to take the technology in their hand and then do things with that technology, build companies, collaborate, and then make it happen. So I think that's really fascinating, for me to sort of visualize even sitting here. So thank you so much, for sharing that story.
May I just say one thing? Thank you for just saying that. All right. So the software cost me to build personally about $2 million US. Okay. So I could have given away $2 million. But that's giving fish, not teaching how to fish. Instead, I invested in something that can scale to be worth trillions of dollars for local communities around the world. Okay, like trillions of dollars for the local communities around the world. So if you think about an exponential return on my investment to help reduce poverty. And when I mean poverty, I'm just not meaning wealth. I'm meaning worth, purpose, opportunity, including food on the table. Yes. Access to education. Yes. All of that. So, that's my contribution, which, if you take 2 million and you spread it over about 8 billion human beings, not a lot of people get a lot, but if anything, right? But if you build some software or whatever tools, education tools, collaboration tools that can be used by the way, and if you've got one community doing something and you find innovation there, you can share it with some other community across the globe. Like you're literally doing moonshots constantly, like at local levels. And moonshots do not have to be like laying the man on the moon. No, how about like nobody in our village is hungry, or everybody in our village can read, or everybody in our village has the opportunity to earn and to have healthcare. Those are real moonshots down at the community level. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I wasn't sure we were going to, but yeah, it's just a good example of what can be done.
Yeah. So, of course, you spoke about communities and, sort of community should be at the heart. And, you have told me this before as well on our previous call that how important it is to build sustainable community and human-centered communities. So, of course, my own experience of visiting Burning Man last year, I got, a very interesting sort of preview of principles that Burning Man has. And I think some of them very closely also relates to building a sustainable community. But to be very frank, the experiment of building sustainable communities is like age old. We have been doing it for quite long now. And there are some examples, of course, in Costa Rica, in Denmark, even in India, we have something called Auroville, which also sort of trying to be a sustainable community. But it's hard to build, right? Because you have this sort of exocosm of world, and then you have this people coming together and building these communities and having the experiments. So my question to you would be like could you share some guidelines or something in your work that you have come across which makes us strong, sustainable and human-centered communities?
Unfortunately, it's very hard to do with the human realm, but I can tell it to you with the fish realm, or the chipmunk realm, or the deer realm, or the tree realm, or the moss realm, or anything but the human realm. Okay? Which is what, think about that. Like truly, please think about that. And this is why my study is human behavior. It's, once again, let's shift it. Instead of saying it's not a sustainability problem, it's a sustainability opportunity that only humans are getting in the way of. Okay? So for real. So if we can take a mind shift and a heart shift. And it happens one human being at a time. And it's from kindness. It's from caring. It's from compassion. And then it's very important. It's not just curiosity of how do we get to the moon, or curiosity like how does a car work, but curiosity about each other. What's more fascinating than an individual human being? So take your time and listen to each other, right? Because when you realize that you're listening to each other to understand each other's perspectives, you're learning. And all we are as a human species is basically a neural network of individual nodes who are wandering around, capturing lots of information through our own perspective. You want to do that all by yourself and just trust your own perspective? Why don't you get curious in other human beings, listen and learn their perspective, and each person you do it with, whoa, I've got 2 lenses, now I've got 3 lenses, now I've got 5 lenses. And just the act of being curious and listening to somebody on top of you learning makes them feel important and makes them feel good. And go figure. The more you listen to somebody, the more you have caring and a relationship with them. And the more they are heard, the more they have caring and a deep relationship with you. Wow, you're actually building trust. What's missing in the world? Trust. So maybe just by being kind, being curious, and being curious about humans, individual humans, and listen to each other, and then collectively come together and decide, and by the way, for the youth, get together in groups, do this to it with each other. And then I challenge you, everybody in the youth groups, gather your parents together and see if they can do the same thing. Actually listen. Without planning what you're going to say next, no, listen, like interview each other and figure out how much you actually have in common, but how much more you can do together. And then you're able to say, that's bridging the gap. So yes, there's a lot to learn from the older generations, but there's a lot that the older generations need to learn from the children. So like, it's the age of children following the footsteps and of the parents is over, okay? But we have to have discipline, curiosity, and respect, but the parents also have to, please listen to the younger people. If you can do it in a respectful way, maybe the young people can lead by example, right? Young people, lead by example, and then ask the older generation to please help. Please, out of respect, please help. We're younger. You have more experience, you have more money, you have this. But like, you say you love us. You say you care about us. You say you've invested in our education. You say you've worked so many long hours just so we could put food on the table. But mom, dad, grandparents, there's not going to be a world. If you really want your investment to pay off, you've struggled your whole life to put us through school. If you really want it to pay off, it doesn't work if the world goes poof. So please help, and do it by everybody just being kind and listening, and then building something that's really foreign to humans these days. It's called this beautiful thing called trust. And if we can get trust back, then the future is so amazing. It's so beautiful, and it's everything that all of our ancestors worked for, died for, right? And it's such a beautiful future. It's just such a beautiful future. And we get there not by building Burning Man camps. Nah, it's from here and here. It's inside each and every one of us. And we lead through kindness, compassion, and curiosity of the other. That's yeah.
No, I mean, just get curious about humans, and you just gave me a new idea. What if we could just, gamify humanity, where we just give them tools for each other to learn about each other and then empower each other. I mean, that's something really brilliant. And thank you so much for sharing.
And by the way, Kunal, that's why, when Sangyukta, right, was going to interview me, I'm like, how cool is that? She's going to ask me questions because I want to know what's important to her, right? I want to know what's important to her, right? Who cares what's important to me? I ain't doing it for me anymore. I care about what's important for her and all the other people who are listening to this.
Perfect. And that is the right time for me to bring a young voice into the equation. And I have Sangyukta with me, who is a young student, and she's also a member of our global volunteer community. So Sangyukta, please introduce yourself and ask your questions.
Greetings again, sir. Thank you for such an insightful discussion, and it was a pleasure listening to you. So, talking about myself, I am an undergraduate student of economics. Studying in Delhi, and I am passionate about all, like, each of the SDGs are equally important to me. And as you said, rightly said, that the 17th SDG together, right? So talking about the youth involvement, sir. So you said about we need to speak up, right? And we need to ask for the elders to like act instead of actually just go into discussions. So I am studying in a college, and then there are some of my age, like there are females and even males of my age who do not have this privilege, but they have these innovative ideas that need to come forth. So how as a youth I can like help people of my age to come forward in this arena and actually put forth their ideas and contribute to a better world tomorrow?
So it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful question. And those of us who are fortunate and blessed to be able to go to university, to have connectivity, right? What do we have? Do you have a smartphone, or I think most phones today have a camera on them?
Yeah.
Go around and ask other youth who don't have that. What are the challenges in their life? I mean, because the truth of the matter is, I don't know. I don't know. And if you don't know what the challenges are, how can anybody build solutions? Right? So if there currently are 4 billion people without connectivity, how do we give them a voice? Go around and collect what's important to them, what their pains are, what their challenges are. Learn. And by the way, the more you learn from each individual, what their challenges, their pain points are, you know what a solution is called? A business. Businesses need customers, right? Huh. So what if you could build, you're walking around with a phone. Why not go ask the people? Film it. And when you do it, share it with your groups. Those who have privilege, those who have access to connectivity, who have information. Hey, let's get together and figure out, like, Seems to be a problem that a lot of these young people have, that or not so young people have. Let's come up with a solution. Then what if we can get somebody to fund it? Because there's already a baked in need for it. That's called innovation. That's what I would, and that's, wow, would that make me so proud to see a whole bunch of youth running around every place around the world, interviewing those people. Anybody. What are your challenges? What are your pain points? What are your obstacles? What do you need? And take literally an entire youth movement of asking those who are in poverty, have hunger, are being affected by inequality, who are being affected by climate change on Earth, being affected by the pollution in the ocean, any one of those, a whole youth movement going around just listening to those stories of the people. And by the way, you have no idea what it'll make them feel like to know that somebody cares, somebody's listening, somebody's maybe even a youth movement's going to come together and do something and build a solution because somebody cares about them. And that's how businesses are built. And that's how the youth businesses are built. And trust me, no guy my age, stodgy, walking around, whatever, is going to go around doing this because basically we're too, I don't know, we're too busy. Or I don't even know how to cut videos together. And I don't even have that many friends who actually care enough is one of the problems, right? The youth care enough.
Thank you so much. So there's one last question. I have inferred from your discussion and your philosophy that, yeah, we need to take action first. And definitely from the previous answer that you gave, we need to go out there and actually ask the questions that need to be asked and to the right people. So coming back to the goal that we are discussing today, what do you think are the three most important steps that I can take as a youth to contribute towards achieving this goal by 2030?
The goal of no poverty?
Yeah.
So first of all, let's put in the hierarchy of poverty, right? Food, health, clothing, shelter. That's okay. Then education, then opportunity. Somewhere in there, love, respect, community, right? So I put those all in there. If you don't have those, then you're at one level of poverty or the other. The very last thing that matters is rich. Or last thing that matters after you go through all this, right? Wow, if you can literally rally a movement of young people hitting the streets and listening to each other and listening to others and capturing it on film, capture it. Capture people's real world problems and get it out there. Get that content out there. If you can literally, and then say, I don't know, we'll be the responsible ones. We'll take responsibility, right? And just be the leaders that. Please be the leaders that the world needs you to be. Okay? Hopefully, the grown-ups on the planet will follow your lead. Okay? Hopefully. But please be the leaders that the world needs to follow the example that you put forward. Okay? And with that, I just have faith that enough love, enough compassion, and enough of the older generations pride in our children and seeing what matters to them. Wow. If we as grown-ups see what matters to our children and that's what they're doing, we'll follow. We will follow, you guys. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much. And thank you, Sangyukta, for your questions. And, for all the people who are joining in and listening to this, to sum up, as Andy put it, most of the problems, it is indeed a human problem. And as we know that people change things, we might as well try and change people a little bit from now on. And of course, we need to move from the mindset of competition to mindset of collaboration. We need to transfer direct tools to more and more people in the world so that they can exponentially grow the solutions of problems in their communities and make things happen at a much larger scale throughout the world. Of course, as Andy rightfully put it, get curious in humans. Listen, come together, and take action. And for all the young people out there, capture the problems and put it out there so that all of us can come together and solve it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy, for your time. And just to conclude the session, everyone who is listening in, thank you so much, Andy, for your time. But before I conclude this session, there is one more question I'd like to ask you, and that is, if you have to sum up your vision for a better world in one sentence, what would that be?
A world where every human being cares about every other human being. A world where every human being realizes that without nature, we don't exist. Every human being that takes accountability for themselves and stop pointing the finger anywhere else for problems. Stop pointing out the problems. Find out what the challenges are. And you, as an individual, build the solutions and learn from each other and respect each other. And the greatest way to respect is to listen. And the greatest way to learn is to ask the right questions of each other. And that's a world of constant learning and constant growing and curiosity that leads to solutions, and it feels good. And then it's just beautiful. It's a world of sharing, and it's a world of love. Like, what happened to love? So it's a world of love, and it's right there for us. It's right there. All we got to do is start behaving. And so it's time for the youth to remind us older folks how to behave, and then we'll follow the youth, and it'll make us young again. It'll make us young again.
Here is to being young and forever young, and here is to that world of sharing and love. And everyone who is listening in and joining in, thank you so much for joining us for this session. Remember, for a world where no one is left behind, it has never been clearer that all of us have a role to play in order to bring about change. Whoever you are, no matter where you come from, every one of us can make a difference. Every action truly counts. Get involved, attend the SDG Action Conclave 2020, participate in the SDG quiz, help raise awareness about the goals, and connect with a global community of passionate volunteers. This Global Goals Week, let us all come together to spread the knowledge about people, planet, and our sustainable development goals. Thank you all for joining us, and follow us on Instagram at Youth Forum India for all the updates. And don't forget to join our next session. Thank you once again. And thank you, Andy, so much for your time. And it was a pleasure and honor to have you with us.
Thank you both so much. And thank you to anybody who's listening to this. I will be thinking about you in my dreams.
Thank you so much, sir.